Hi, this is George from Upsells, your marketing automation expert. Today's video is going to be a little bit different to normal. I'm not going to show you an actual automation and how it was made, but I'm going to explain a little bit about the theory of making automations and how that can be applied to your wider marketing engine strategy. Now, the thing about making workflows is you don't start at the beginning. You should always design your workflow from the backwards. So, for example, if I was to start making a workflow here, okay, if I was writing it forwards, it would be something like collect data, and then I might say, okay, I want the first name, the last name, the email address, and then it'll be add to CRM, and then finally send out an email campaign, okay? Now, it should already be obvious that this would work, but let's just imagine here the data collecting, and this is the first step, and I only think to myself, I need the first name, I need the last name, I need the email. I add that to my CRM, and then I add that to the email campaign, and then later on it turns out, okay, I also want to start automating, for example, sales collaterals, and for that I'm going to want a slideshow, and included in that I want the company name and the logo. All of a sudden, you need to go to the very beginning of your automation, change everything in both the workflow and also add new fields to the CRM. And every time you make that change, it's extra work and extra space for things to go wrong. The way you should go is entirely backwards. So for example, you know for a sales slideshow, I need the company name, I need the logo, I need the website. For an email campaign, I also need the email address, maybe the job title. For the CRM, I also need extra information like where they're based and the country they're in. And then once I start collecting data, I know exactly what I need and I can map it all properly. Now, this works very similarly to how your whole marketing engine should work. So if I use another example here, and let's just say that outside of automations, you're doing some marketing campaign. You decide to yourself, okay, great, I've got a great idea, I'm really creative, I've got some amazing ad copy. And based on that ad copy, I'm going to make a landing page which syncs up with that ad copy. And based on that landing page, I expect to get a certain amount of clients. And then your salesperson turns around to you and says, well, what type of clients are you getting? And you tell them, I'm getting the clients that work on the ad copy. Now, if you work it backwards, so for example, you start off with the client and you think to yourself, just like with a workflow, what data? What does a good client look like? How do I define them? What data do I need? You might say, well, a client I want has a revenue between 500,000 to $1 million. A good client is someone who is a chief marketing officer rather than a chief operating officer, for example. They're based in the EU, they're based in this industry, for example. Once you have that data and the exact definition of what a good client looks like to you, then you can say, all right, what kind of a landing page actually makes sense to that client? What would make them convert? What would get them interested in what I'm selling? And once you have that figured out, then you can make the ad copy. So you would tell them, all right, so based on what I know about the client and what I have on the landing page, yes, my ad copy doesn't come from this sudden lightning bolt of inspiration, as in the first example, but it will actually work. So whereas this, you might get 20 random clients, of which 5 might be useful to your company. The second method means 100% of the clients you get should be relevant to your company. Now, to expand that further, we can actually apply this to an entire marketing engine. So again, most people start from the bottom up. They think, all right, I need to start thinking about Google ads, I need to think about Facebook ads, I need to think about LinkedIn ads, and it goes from there. We start from the very end though, okay? So in this case, we would be looking at, for example, a customer. Now again, we go to the very end. It's not the first customer, it's a customer who is upselled. So we have an event that happens, a customer upsells. They buy a new product from us after already having been registered for another product. We think to ourselves, so what does that involve from a content kind of point of view? It means that we need to have social media posts ready to go. So something online to say, hey, one of our valued customers has become even more of a customer. So that means you need to have templates. You need to have a social media branding kit. It also, for this, depending on what kind of industry you're in, it would also be very useful perhaps to have a press release coming out. So in terms of press release, okay, you need to have an idea, and this is when it really comes into it, of what you're going to be saying, which is XXX company bought YYY product for the reasons of believing in our company because of ZZZ. So that gives you an idea of who it is you're selling to, who's your ideal person, your ideal product, the ethos, the values behind your brand, if you will. And then of course, based on the PR, there's also other stuff as well. So you need to know exactly what is my PR distribution network. So Do I have a PR distribution network? Do I have a social media distribution network? So do I know which channels I have to post and where? What kind of voices do I need to use on these particular ones? Now, you might think, okay, social media PR, this is bottom funnel kind of stuff. This is where, where I would normally start. But the context here is different. You're not starting it from a point of view talking about your company, building awareness and finding customers. It's purely from the point of view of, talking about things which already make sense. So working backwards, we already have PR, social media sorted out. Now, in order for a customer to upsell, they don't just suddenly, well, some people might suddenly decide to buy your product, but generally speaking, there is a sales process involved. So is this an automated process where they get a drip feed of information all of the time? So after someone signed up, they still get drip feed emails. Does it involve salespeople reaching out? If it involves salespeople reaching out, do I need to have specific content for sales? So for example, slideshows, do I need to have really, really deep case studies and reports? So this is extra content that you should start trying to create before you create other things. And now, in terms of this sales process, first off, you actually need to identify them as an ideal customer. So not everybody in your CRM is somebody who is going to upsell. So this is important. How do you know someone is an ideal customer? And when they are an ideal customer, how do they enter the sales process? Well, in addition to the drip feed and the general sales outreach, you might have special campaigns for these ideal customers. You might have roundtables that you invite the high-performing people to. You might have case study collaboration requests that you want to do with them, or some sort of a partnership through social media. So it's a good idea to have an idea of what you want to do to your ideal customers once you've actually identified them as such. But how do you identify someone as an ideal customer? So we were talking before about automated workflows and the data you need to know. This is very much in the same thing. You need to have some sort of a product usage monitoring in place. So this might be a case of getting an idea in your CRM, so to have fields already prepared for how often they log into the product, how often, what kind of changes in billing cycles they have. Do they every year? Do they pay more every year? Do they pay less? How often do they transfer data within the product? It really depends on what you're selling and what your process is. But you should really think about how it is you would essentially identify someone as an ideal customer. So I'll just put in here how often they transfer data. Now, the flip side of this, of course, is that they might not be an ideal customer. Using this very same methodology, you might be able to find bad customers. Now, I put bad in question marks here because they're not, no one's a bad customer. What I mean is that they're not an ideal customer. Why is that? So based on the product usage, again, to reduce churn, you might have a process in place of giving out how-to guides to these people. Having a customer success triage, for example, having notifications to account reps, getting them involved. So again, there's a whole, within each of these boxes, I say here just distribution, here how-to guides, customer success. Each of these boxes can be expanded into a whole other realm of topics and potential projects and tasks. It's really a case of just identifying what makes the most sense to you. But again, working backwards, we're starting to see some progress. Working backwards, we already know who our ideal customers are. We know how we define ideal customers. We know how to turn bad customers into ideal customers. We have a basic idea of the sales processes they want to see. So we're already getting an idea of the messaging, the consistent, persistent messaging from the top to the bottom of what these people need to see in order to move them to the next level. Now, in addition to, once you're, to go even further back, for the product usage monitoring. First off, they actually need to be using the product, which would involve some sort of onboarding system. So when a customer becomes a customer and you're onboarding them into the product, what do you have in place here? So for most people, this would be something like a product tour. It would be regular calls with an account rep. It might be drip feed emails to explain how to work your particular product or your service. Manual help with setting up an account. There's a whole bunch of things here which can be essentially automated and designed ahead of time, so you're ready to go. And it means, again, you know exactly what data you need to collect as early on as possible to make sure this works well without having to go through it all and changing everything up again. Now, in order to onboard a customer, first they need to become a customer. Makes sense, right? So in order to become a customer, what does that involve? So for most people, this will be processes relating to invoices. It will be processes related to quotes. It will be processes related to contracts, assigning salespeople, assigning account reps, assigning salespeople, assigning the right team members to go over this. So again, a whole bunch of processes here that need to be automated. a whole bunch of content that needs to be created, and more importantly, data that needs to be collected. So when it comes, for example, for invoices, is it a salesperson who is on the phone with them, talking to them and adds it into the CRM manually, or do you send the customer a form that they pre-fill themselves to add this information? Is it information that's automatically collected through a scraping process, for example? These are all things, again, that are helpful to know before you set up your CRM and your sales and marketing processes further down the channel, just to make sure that you don't have to go back again and do it all over. Now, in order to become a customer, we've returned to an earlier process here of sales processes. So again, your salespeople, if it's not entirely self-service, there'll be a process involved here. So for example, you might have, again, pretty similar to before, slide decks, but more introductory in nature. You might have demos, you might have videos, you might have newsletters. So from the marketing side of things, they might help as well, setting up events, one-off mailings about particular pieces of information all through your CRM. This all supports the sales process to someone becoming a customer. But in order to do most of these processes, specifically newsletters, emails, invitations to events, they first need to be in the CRM. So we have the process here, enter the CRM, and this is a big one. Essentially the problem here is what data needs to be collected and what data will possibly be needed in the future, and will you be able to accommodate for that? Will you be able to make changes quickly in your particular CRM choice? Now, to go down further, before they enter the CRM, they need to be someone who's interested in your company. So there's a few ways that that might happen. For most people, it will be someone who's checked out your website. So they've done a website submission. So in order for someone to support a website submission, you actually need to have a website, curiously enough. You need to have various pages. You might need to have product pages. You might need to have FAQs. Not all, as you probably know, not all websites are equal. Some have hundreds of pages, some have mainly 5. The thing that informs this is not you starting at the beginning, it's you starting at the end and figuring out what does that customer upsell? What do they need? How many pages on average do you think they would look at before they become an initial customer? In addition to the website submissions, there will probably be, at the first point of contact, a landing page. So most of these are specifically designed. This is their first point of contact. It's usually something like perhaps gated content or a webinar or a blog or some sort of, essentially it's a way for them to get into contact and facilitate the website submission, so where they give their details, so gated content, webinars, a request for a demo, something like that, some sort of, or maybe a calendar submission request, something simple. So again, you need to make sure you have something on your website that actually lets people get in contact. And then in terms of this landing page, this first point of contact, how do they hear about it? So how did they find us? I apologize for my typing here. I have an Estonian keyboard, but I am English, so it's very hard for me to still, after all these years, get used to how it works. So in terms of how they hear about the company, I won't go into full details here because otherwise this will get very huge very quickly. But broadly speaking, you might have SEO. So they've gone onto Google, they've searched for your company. How do they find you from there? Well, it might be because you have an internal blog. And if you have an internal blog, obviously that means you need to have content, you need to have frameworks, you need to have structure, you need to have content pillars. But it might also be from some sort of an external place. So, for example, you might have a partnership with Gartner. So they've gone onto Gartner, they've gone onto another review site, they've gone onto a partner site, they've gone on to some place where your PR has worked well. So for both internal blogs, obviously make up the bulk of what your SEO will do, 90% of it, but depending on your product, you might be relying a lot on Product Hunt, you might be relying on Gartner, you might be relying on these kind of websites, so you need to make sure you have great profiles there. That means you need to collect reviews from customers, you need to collect input from other people, there's a whole bunch of other frameworks and processes you need to think about. Beyond SEO, other popular ones might be organic social media, so obviously that means you need to have social media pages, you need to know what channels, Reddit, Facebook, LinkedIn. The same goes for paid ads. So again, this could be through Google, it could be through LinkedIn, it could really be through anywhere, but it means that you need to know precisely which channels work, where these people who are going to become your main customer upsells, where do they live, where do they come from, what messaging needs to be put to get them into your system in the first place. Now, this is all one half of it. These are website submissions. A lot of people just might reach out and contact you. So for example, if you have a hello@mycompany.com, these people are going to be sending you emails. And where do these people come from? Now it's likely these people will be coming from events. So do you need to have events? Do you need to have an events procedure for collecting leads, processing leads, enriching leads when your salespeople go to events, if you even have these? They might come from cold outreach. So do you do cold campaigns? What data do you need to collect? Who do you need to target? It could be coming from also a form of social media, but not your company's social media, your employees' LinkedIn pages, your employees' Instagrams, your employees' Facebook. Do you need to have a process in place to collect this? So zooming out, and this is by far, this is definitely not exhaustive, but it does show you where to start from. If I was starting from the bottom here, and I was saying to myself, all right, I need to get some paid ads set up. I need to create some social media for my employees. I need to create organic social media posts. I'm starting from a position of weakness. I'm just choosing essentially any channel I have, and I'm choosing any kind of messaging that makes sense to me at the time. Based on that, where they go, I'll say, all right, I need to have a blog to support this. I need to have a web page to support this. I need to have a CRM to enter those details. And then all of a sudden, the process becomes a lot harder. All of a sudden, it's, well, I've got, because it's not targeted, I have 20, 30 different ICPs, which means I need 20, 30 different slide decks. I need a whole bunch of different demos, videos, and newsletters to make sense of these people. And in terms of the newsletters, because I wasn't thinking of this, I didn't get double opt-in. So very early on, I have to start making changes. Once they become a customer, all of this information about invoices and quotes, I need to enter this manually because I didn't think about the process put in place to collect this stuff automatically. Product usage monitoring, because I've got so many different people who I'm targeting, I have a whole bunch more bad customers than ideal customers. So I can no longer upsell. I can no longer put in place these really high value content pieces where I do deep dive case studies, deep dive interviews, roundtables. Instead, I'm only focusing on generic how-to guides and customer success triages. When it comes to the customer upsells, I've got nothing to tell anybody. So this is, again, not a normal video. I actually made this because someone I was talking to recently mentioned they got a lot of value from this kind of process. This particular process will not make sense to most people because, well, I only made it in 15 minutes. It's not well thought out. But the principles in place should help your company immensely. You start from the end, you work your way forward, you figure out the 80-20 rule. Which of these particular conversion points can be improved the most? Which of these particular channels will bring me the most new people? And which of those new people are actually good people? If you'd like to talk about this more in depth with me, just shoot me an email or mark an appointment in my calendar or leave a comment in the YouTube. All right, thank you very much for your time.